Welcome to Level Up, a podcast for independent artists navigating the Asian music industry. I'm your host, Giselle Koh. I'm a music journalist, the founder of platform Asian Pop Weekly, and an all-around Mandopop nerd. Join me in taking control of your career as an artist, and I'll show you how to make the most of it. Hi guys, and welcome back to yet another episode of the Level Up podcast. I'm really excited for this one because this episode is also on digital distribution, and it will be the last one in the digital distribution series. I hope all of these episodes have been really helpful for you in your artist journey, and also even for music business industry professionals who want to learn more about new markets, especially within Asia. I hope that they've been helpful. So other than that though, this episode we're diving deep into yet another region in Asia. Oh, I just gave it away. Another region in Asia which I find really, really interesting. So although I am born in Singapore and based here at the moment, my area of focus has always skewed a little bit more towards the Greater China music market, but that's also why I decided to relocate to Singapore so that I could understand a little bit more about the Southeast Asian music landscape and how it interacts with the global music industry, and also as local markets, how much potential they have and what's different in those markets. And from what I've learned so far, I feel like they are really, really interesting and diverse markets. So the biggest misconception, which we'll get into later, is that Southeast Asia is just like, just one region and that's it. Like the culture in this region is homogeneous, but actually that is completely untrue. All the different countries here have their own culture, they have their own history, they have their own politics, they have their own makeup, heritage and makeup, and that's what makes it like a lot more interesting than people necessarily perceive. So I wanted to dive deep into the Southeast Asian music market today, and I've brought on my colleague and friend Tim from Believe. He heads up our editorial and marketing partnerships team at Believe, and he is one of those people that you as artists, you probably want to know what's going on inside his head, because he and his team are the ones who help to communicate your works to the DSPs. Tim has some really, really amazing insights about how the Southeast Asian music industry works, and also about how artists can best market themselves in this digital space, because although everyone knows about TikTok, everyone knows about Spotify, blah, blah, blah. But I think the way people use these platforms in different regions are also different. And he gives a pretty good overview of exactly how at least artists in the Asian or Southeast Asian market should be trying to make an impact, which I think is really, really cool. So definitely, again, don't forget to subscribe to our Patreon page if you would like more resources and worksheets. We're definitely going to put the show notes for this episode up. And also we're going to dive a little deeper into Tim's 5-star promotional plan for the DSPs. So all this stuff is going to be available on our Patreon page under the Level Up tier. If you're interested, please do subscribe, and you can get access to all the previous worksheets we've done from the previous episodes. And without further ado, let's just get straight into the podcast. Hi Tim, welcome to our podcast. So I know that you used to work at Sony and now you're working at Believe, heading up our editorial and marketing partnerships team for the Southeast Asia region. But do you want to introduce yourself quickly?
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it, right?
Okay, sure.
So thank you for the introduction. But yeah, I mean, in short, I'm Tim, and I'm part of the editorial and marketing partnerships team at Believe. Prior to this, I was with Sony Music in Singapore and a little while in Warner Music in Singapore as well. So that's me.
Cool. So I know obviously you're head of editorial and marketing partnerships, but what does that actually mean?
Well, editorial and marketing partnerships. Do you want like the easy explanation, or?
You can give us the easy one, and then I want to go a little bit deeper.
All right, sure.
Yeah.
So what we do is we basically tell your story to our partners.
Okay.
That's what we do.
All right. Break it down.
Well, it's basically working with you guys, with our artists and labels, clients to deliver the best release strategies across all music streaming platforms to increase editorial visibility, audience engagement, and enhancing streams and revenues. So yeah.
So basically, you deal with all the promotional resources from platforms that artists usually want to get their hands on, right?
Yes, that's right. So platforms deal with the promotional resources that platforms have.
All right. Well, I know that definitely this is done in every single region. So of course, there are artists everywhere who just want to get their hands on more promotional resources. But obviously, the Southeast Asian music market is pretty unique for many different reasons. So for example, even though it's called Southeast Asia, the whole of Southeast Asia is not just one country or one culture. It's composed of like many different languages, blah, blah, blah. So how would you say this difference translates into the digital music landscape overall?
I think you'll see it reflected more and more, especially now in the charts. So that's one way that you can look at it, especially in, let's say, a country with whose language is the main language is not English. So you'd see maybe a couple of years ago, 10, 15, 20 years ago, you'd see a lot of English and international tracks in those charts. But if you look at it now, you'll see a hell of a lot of domestic tracks, local tracks that are coming up. So that is true for most regions around the world. It's true especially in Southeast Asia. Yeah.
That's cool. So basically you've been seeing like a trend of change, right? And I think we've been seeing that across the board, and we talked about that in our interview with Jim, our head of Taiwan as well, where previously there were global superstars who were like just dominating the charts, be it Taiwan dominating the charts on Asia or like the American pop stars dominating. But right now we're seeing a shift to niche markets or just like local content, right? And I find that really interesting. So can you share, because I know that Southeast Asia is made out of many different countries, but can you share with us, because some people don't even know what country Southeast Asia is made up of, and like the different regions that are part of it that make up key parts of the music industry. So can you share a little bit about the different regions, maybe which ones have high growth potential or might be interesting markets just overall?
I think most markets are interesting markets in Southeast Asia.
True.
Most of them also have high potentials for growth. It's not just one. I guess in Southeast Asia, if you talk about slightly more mature developed markets in terms of music streaming, you probably have maybe Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, I want to say. But I think, to be very honest, I think it would probably just be Singapore if you were to compare it with, international markets type of maturity, or the maturity where international markets are at. In this region, probably, only Singapore would kind of be comparable. It's just in terms of the landscape of the streaming market in the country itself. If that makes any sense.
Well, I also wanted to ask, what do you mean by Singapore being like a mature streaming market? Is it based on the audience?
Yes, so on the audience size, on not really audience size, sorry, but more so in terms of the level of technology, level of internet penetration, mobile penetration. Streaming services have been here for a longer time than most territories. Therefore, the consumers here are a little bit more mature in terms of they're aware of these things. They're used to subscription packages. They're used to, streaming services in general. Whereas if you compare it to a market like Laos or like maybe even Vietnam, might not be that familiar with your Spotify's, your Apple Music's and whatever.
Yeah, but how much value does maturity have? Because, for example, I know Singapore is a very small market. So given the fact that it is a mature market, but it is also like a very small market, how does a place like Singapore compare to maybe Indonesia or Philippines in terms of like a streaming market?
Okay, so if you go all the way back, right, I guess a clearer kind of answer would be yes, they're very diverse. I guess the main reason for that being that a lot of markets that we have here, a lot of countries, they have their own national language, they have their own culture, and they have a very strong sense of that.
Yeah.
Right, so if you look at Indonesia, if you look at Thailand, nobody else in the world speaks Bahasa Indonesia, nobody else in the world speaks Thai, nobody else in the world speaks Vietnam. So they're very strong in that sense, where they have a very strong base of, I would say, creatives. That you know, local creatives coming up with, you know, local tracks or local arts in general, I guess. So that's very strong in those markets, right? I don't think it's a new trend. I think it's always been there, right? But because of technology that's making it easily accessible for these guys to start, you know, I guess it's easier for them to have more exposure. So that's why you're starting to see a lot of local music that is coming up to the forefront. I don't think it's a brand new trend where people suddenly like, oh yeah, you know, I'm going to support my own artists from my own country. I think that's always been around, right? But it's more so that right now you are able to see it because technology in those countries have caught up with everywhere else.
Okay, I see. Interesting. Do you want to share about any other markets in Southeast Asia that might have high growth potential, or in general you're just like all of them do?
I think most of them do, if not all of them do. But I think in particular, you would say maybe Vietnam.
Okay, why?
A lot of interesting things in Vietnam with regards to the music industry over the last year or two, or actually over the last couple of years already. But yeah, I think now we're starting to see really, really big growth in terms of, you know, just the size of the market in Vietnam.
Oh, okay, because are you saying that because they're maturing at like a really fast pace?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So obviously because of like the differences in languages, blah, 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 the platforms that are doing well in each of the regions are also like a little bit different, right? So can you share a little bit about some of the key platforms overall in the Southeast Asian market, and obviously like some key ones for like particular regions?
Okay. So in Southeast Asia, in terms of music streaming, it's still international platforms. So Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music. And then in Southeast Asia, we do have local DSPs as well, like KKBox and Jukes. Although they're not everywhere in the region, they are in most markets. So those are, I would say, the local players together with the international players in those markets. I would say they might not be as huge in just terms of volumes as an international player, but they are equally important in local markets.
And why is that?
Well, local DSPs, most of the time they've started out there first before the international ones come in. They're also going after different audiences, I would say. So the trend that we've seen is that they tend to get behind more local artists than, you know, bigger DSPs.
And would you say that them getting behind the local artists helps to push them to like another level where those artists can potentially get more support from like the international DSPs, or is that not a thing?
I think it's a different topic, or it's a different point. Yeah. Local artists meaning like they would go into, if we were talking about, you know, the US or something, and you know, all the types of genres of music that come out from the US, right? So a bigger player would maybe go for the pop stuff,
right,
or the rock stuff,
okay,
bigger genres. So the other guys would go for really local stuff, so maybe mountain music.
okay.
You know,
I got it. Okay, that's interesting. And yeah, as you said, I think that's definitely a trend we see. So because when we were discussing with Jim as well, he was also saying the same thing about, for example, KKBox in Taiwan. Their listenership is very much focused on like Chinese music, and specifically like Chinese ballad types of music. But it's a little bit different in that I guess it's maybe a culture thing, because with Taiwan, it's like the KKBox, they are the ones who are focusing on like the real Mandarin pop stuff, whereas Spotify and Apple Music are actually more interested in supporting like indie or like maybe alternative genres. But I think that's just because of the way the market's made up, and also like in overseas markets, things like R&B, hip hop are all considered like mainstream, whereas in Taiwan it's a little bit different. Right. So yeah, do you see that kind of do you see any kind of genre divides between like the local DSPs and the international?
I would say you would have to look at the target audience of the DSP itself.
Okay.
So because they're going after this set of target audience, that's why they want these artists and that's why they want these genres, or that's why they want to showcase these genres to enhance their positioning and their branding, right? So yeah.
So for example,
you know, in let's say in Indonesia, international players are doing it now, but prior to that, you know, a couple of years ago, you would probably only be able to get Dangdut on maybe a Jukes. Whereas it won't be available on Spotify, right? But now I think it's the international players are starting to realize the importance of these kinds of local genres, local music, and you know, and they are making stuff in the platforms to kind of cater to this.
Oh, okay. I see. And that's going to be like an increasing trend because like as the market continues to mature, they're going to want more of it, right?
Right.
Okay, interesting. Well, definitely again, that was still very much focused on like local, but for example, say I have an indie artist who's interested in exploring their music. They're not really necessarily from Southeast Asia. Maybe they might be from Greater China or like Australia or US, I don't know. But so would you say for them that Southeast Asia is a viable option for like overseas expansion or not?
I don't think there is a, you know, cookie cutter kind of yes or no.
Yeah.
I think it really depends on the type of music you do and the artist proposition that you have and whether that resonates in the region, right? And as we said, the region is so diverse that it's not I'm targeting Southeast Asia, therefore I get 7 countries.
Exactly.
It doesn't work that way. So, you know, treat every country in Southeast Asia as a country. Like, you know, and in any country that you want to target, you definitely have to have a sort of a plan to get into it. So I think that is something that you should definitely think about, right? Is it a viable market? I think every market is a viable market, but if you have no plan to get into a market, then it's not going to be a viable market for you.
Right.
Even if you're talking about a whole market and if you don't have a plan, it's not a viable market for you.
That's true. Yeah. Well, I think first of all, the big misconception is that I just want to target Southeast Asia, and then but obviously, as you said, you do have to have a plan. For example, if we have an artist who is very invested in a particular genre,
right,
like rock music,
right,
is there a specific market in Southeast Asia that you would recommend them to target, or again, is it just like you really need to understand the market before you go into it?
Yeah, you do. I think there are definitely nuances as well in between markets in terms of the genres that they prefer. So, for example, in Thailand, indie music is their mainstream pop.
Okay.
Right? So there you go. So if you're talking about rock and metal, I don't think it's that big of a genre in Southeast Asia on the whole. There are definitely markets that are slightly more receptive to it. So Indonesia,
yeah,
maybe a little bit of Malaysia and probably Philippines.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean Singapore, no.
Of course.
There you go. So I don't know whether. Where else? Vietnam? I don't think so as well.
Doesn't seem like it to me.
I don't think so as well. So yeah, there you go. Indonesia probably, they still have quite a big scene for rock music and for metal music, right? So yeah, there you go. You need to understand, I guess, the different countries and what they kind of prefer and whether there's a viable market for your music in the first place. Okay,
but I mean, this is a bit off topic, but I feel like, okay, understanding is one thing, but where are these overseas artists going to get those resources to understand the market? Like, what would be the first step to understanding that market? Yeah.
Well, just a very, very quick way, you can just go on to charts.spotify.com, find the, the country that you want, and then you can look at the songs there in the top 50 and then
see if yours kind of...
You kind of have an idea of what the market wants, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And YouTube as well, you know, it's available, right? You can find. In fact, you could probably find, I don't know, maybe the country's recording association chart.
Something like that. Some kind of chart.
I'm pretty sure you'll be able to find those pretty easily.
Okay. Good advice. I never thought of that, but yes. Because that is a question that I get a lot from artists who just have like no idea where to start. So actually the charts is a good place. Okay, so I do have another like specific question or trend that I wanted to pick your brain about. So I see that there are a lot of Southeast Asian artists who are wanting to expand to the Greater China market.
Right.
Whereas actually sometimes like I get people telling me like they're not sure why, because they do see like a really viable music market in Southeast Asia for them, and they are from Southeast Asia. Like, do you have any thoughts on this trend?
Yeah, I mean, I can totally understand why if they were Mandarin artists, right, doing Mandarin stuff.
Yeah.
Because if you talk about Mandarin language, yeah, it's pretty popular in Southeast Asia, I guess. But it's not the main language, right? It's only the main language for certain countries. So for Singapore, for Malaysia, yeah.
Yeah.
Thailand, I don't know.
I don't think
Vietnam,
so.
I don't know. You know, Philippines, no.
Yeah.
So there you go, right? And if you were a Mandarin artist, I totally understand why you would want to go into Greater China, because those are the markets that speak the language that
Like
you
literally everyone is singing in that language.
right? And I think, yeah, I think that's my thoughts on it. That's why I think I can totally understand why. I think it's a language thing. If you want to, you know, if your music is in Chinese, then it's a no-brainer that you should target China. Right?
Yeah, I think it comes back to another misconception that people have about the Southeast Asian market, especially people coming from the Greater China region. They just see it as like Singapore, Malaysia, and then like a blur.
Yeah.
And then they just assume that is the norm across the whole of Southeast Asia, when that's really not the case.
No.
Actually, even in Malaysia, there is a sizable Chinese-speaking population, but they are not even the majority population, right? And in Singapore, yes, Chinese like people with Chinese heritage are the majority, but some of them can't even speak Chinese. I'm sorry. I don't know if that should go in the podcast, but like, yeah, I mean, we do have like a very diverse community here. So even though we are the majority, number one, we're still small. Number two, we're not the entirety of Singapore. So yeah, it makes total sense for them. If they want to reach a bigger market, if they want to find success in terms of scale, then they need to go to where everyone is listening to Chinese music.
Yeah, exactly,
right?
man. So I mean, case in point, like JJ Lin, I'm pretty sure you're familiar with JJ Lin. He's probably one of the biggest Mando pop acts, whatever. So he's been in Malaysia, he's been in Singapore. When was the last time he was in Thailand or Vietnam or Indonesia? I don't know. I think you will know better than me. I've seen him go to the UK and the US.
Yeah lah, because there's like Chinese diaspora populations there.
That's the question, right? Why? And therefore, from GC to here, you don't see that. And that's why you're going to see from here to GC, because there's no real market here for Chinese music, right? Besides Singapore and Malaysia.
Right. Yeah. So even before Believe, you worked at Sony and you coordinated many successful marketing campaigns, both for Asian artists within the region and also for like international acts, right? Do you have any advice for independent artists working with aggregators on how they can best communicate their plans?
As early as possible and as comprehensive as possible, I'd say. Any advice on communicating the plans, right?
Yeah.
So in terms of just, this is my plan, that's what I'm going to do.
I guess. Yeah.
So just make it as comprehensive as possible.
Okay.
And then you should include every element of your promotion.
Okay.
Right. So from how many posts I'm going to do, what sort of posts they're going to be, where they're going, which platforms they're going on, what am I doing on radio, what am I doing on press or TV or whatever. Any type of promotional activities around your release. You playing any shows, you doing any interviews, you getting any press coverage. That's also very important. But I think all in all, the communication on the plan should be as comprehensive and as complete as possible.
Okay.
Right.
But my question is, why does it have? Because I know that. Like, I know usually when artists ask me like, how much information should I put? How long should my bio be?
Yeah.
Like, I just tell them, like, if you're unsure, just include as much information as possible. But why is that, like, a good technique to get, like, the DSPs to increase their chance of supporting you?
See, what we do in editorial and marketing partnerships is we negotiate with these DSPs to get placements and to get features, right? When you're speaking to a big international DSP, you're not just up against your peers, right? You're up against the Justin Biebers and Taylor Swifts of the world. So as much information as possible that we have equals to bullets that we can use to try and pitch your release for features, because the more ammo we have, the more chances you have as well, right? So if you just put in something with a one-liner that says, I was inspired by Jay Cho, that's why I wrote this track, and that's the only piece of information you give us, what do you expect?
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, one piece of advice I would give is that streaming platforms are also businesses. Right? And everyone here is in a business, right? And it doesn't make any sense for a business to go into a partnership with anybody if there is no benefit to the business. So if you are coming out with any plans for any of these DSPs, I think you should put yourselves in their shoes as well, right? Why should I pick this artist from God knows where when I have the opportunity to feature like a, Justin Timberlake or something? What's the value behind that? So I think that's something you really have to think about when you're crafting these plans.
Yeah, and I think again that goes back to like these artists who are wanting to level up, because like that's the name of the podcast, right? They should actually be looking at music not just as creative, but also as looking at the business side of it. And if, for example, you are an artist, you could also be considered like an entrepreneur. And if you are an entrepreneur who wants more visibility for your product, you want more sales, whatever, you need to pitch, right?
Yeah.
And DSPs is one of those partners that you can pitch yourself to. So you better make it count.
Exactly.
Right? Okay. Yeah. Good analogy.
Yeah.
So you did mention like as comprehensive as possible is best. Could you describe like an artist marketing or promotional plan or package that you would just give like 5 stars to?
Recently came across one that Kara sent for Ganga.
Hi, Kara.
So yeah, I thought that one was good. Basically, they covered all the elements of a promotional plan. So they had, I think it was certain campaigns that they were doing during the entire period. So they had teaser period, I think, when the track actually released, and then post-release there were plans as well. And it was all part of a big campaign leading up to an album. So I think it was at least a 6 months or almost a year kind of plan.
Whoa, that's a long plan.
So there you go. And each element also had specific plans for each platform that they were doing it with. So they had like different campaigns going on with different music platforms.
Oh wow! And these artists, are they like really big?
Yeah, I think this guy is just breaking out of Indonesia now, so he's got very high hopes, and I think he's got a lot of potential. So his name is Ganga. He's got this track called Blue Jeans. I think it was #1 on the global Spotify viral charts a couple of weeks ago.
Cool.
So yeah, very, very exciting. But I think that is the type of work that it takes, right?
Yeah, that's a lot of work though,
Yeah.
probably. Okay, so last question. From your point of view, like what do you feel like is the best thing artists can do for themselves when they're trying to increase their visibility, but in the earlier stages? Yeah, because I know you said Ganga, but he's considered like already like growing pretty fast, and he probably has a team behind him to help him do all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So if you're thinking about like independent artists, what is your advice for like the best thing they can do?
I think for independent artists, you're probably on your own. Everything is DIY.
Yeah.
So that means you have zero team, nothing.
We just assume that, yeah.
Okay. I think first of all, you have to set up your channels correctly. So all your social media channels, right? Because when fans think about you and when fans discover you, they will be searching on the internet, who's this guy and blah, blah, blah. So I think your channels have to be optimized for sure. Get them set up. You don't have to have all social media, just have a few that you really concentrate on. You will also have to have, content that is maybe not musical related, but that showcases you as an artist, right? So when people look for you and when people search for you, they want to find out more about you. So what can you do to tell them your story? So that kind of content, that one you should be thinking about. You should do it already, and then those should be on your channels. So when your song comes out and people start looking for it, they will discover that type of content, have a bigger connection there. So that's how you start slowly growing your base, right? And I also think that once your channels are optimized, once you have enough content on your channels that's interesting enough, and then you have you're slowly growing that fan base in an organic way, and then you just keep consistently putting out releases and working on new music. That's the way to go. I don't think you should be disheartened if you don't get any features or whatever. You just treat that as a build-up of your catalog, so that when something comes, everything is there.
Yeah.
Right. So in the music industry, for as long as I've been in here, nobody knows where a hit's going to come from. You can set up all you want a year, 2 years in advance. I've seen some plans, and then when the album comes out, it really flops. And I've seen some plans where it's just, by the way,
Here you go,
check out this track, man. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. And then the next day, boom, number one viral hit somewhere, and nobody really pushed for that as well, but it just came, right? And then what are you doing to capture the attention that you suddenly have now?
Right.
So it will be very wasted opportunity if you have no content, nothing to tell your story on your artist channels, and then you have that song that blows up, and then when people are looking for you, like, who's this guy?
Yeah, so it all comes down to 2 points, right? Storytelling and like making sure your process is right.
And like I said, there's no one cookie cutter way of telling a story, because your story is unique, right? And if you're trying to template somebody else's story, then
yeah,
you shouldn't be in this business, I guess.
That's true. I think everything that we talk about on this podcast is literally, that's why we don't focus on things like specific strategies for Facebook or specific strategies for TikTok. It's more about like the mindset strategies to help artists to grow, because as you said, there's no one way of doing things. We're just trying to empower artists to have the resources to make their own decisions, make their own calls, plan their own strategy in a way that really suits themselves and their music. Someone once told me like his best advice for independent artists was like, learn to do as much as possible yourself.
Yeah, learn to do as much as possible yourself. I think the other thing is, do not neglect your base, even though they might be small. Right? Because it's more important to have that one person that will talk about your music to 10 friends than to have 100 people that only listen to your song once. Right? So those guys will become your advocates, man. You don't have to pay them. It's free marketing for you, and it's the best kind of marketing because word of mouth. And there's a lot of influence right there. So focus on your fans, man, because the more you treat them well, the more they would likely to promote you as well to their friends, and then it's like a thing that cascades down.
Snowball effect or whatever.
Yeah. So if you're indie, I think fans are your main marketing tools. Don't come up with like a fancy plan you cannot execute, or like a fancy plan that's like, oh yeah, I'm doing this and this and this and this, and then when you look at the results, I got like 12 people to click on my link or something. So
true.
Or like 10 people participated in my dance challenge. Why are you wasting that kind of effort? Just connect with that one guy who's always liking your post or always commenting on your post and asking him, what the fuck do you like about my music? What can I do for you? Would you like to meet me on Zoom calls? I mean, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It's up to you how you wanna do it, but I think those are your most valuable promotional assets, right? And they're free. They already like you. You don't have to pitch to them, man.
Yeah. That is a very interesting perspective. So on the last episode, when I asked Jim what his best advice was, he was like saying, have a good plan. But I think, as you said, sometimes that can be counterintuitive to have you don't want to go overboard and do something that you honestly can't achieve by yourself, or like something that's just not going to resonate with your fans.
Yeah.
So do an achievable plan. If possible, do a good one. But don't go overboard, and also engage deeply with the audience that you already have, because they're your best chance of growing it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And your plan should focus on your audience already, right?
Yeah, it should all come together. What was that I learned in marketing class? Integrated marketing communications. Synergy. Yeah, create synergy.
Yeah, so those are, I guess that's like organic tips for growth, right? It's much easier to convince somebody that already likes you to help spread the word for you than somebody that's totally new, and then you hit them and think, fuck, is this what I'm seeing on the feed, right?
Yeah, but I feel like social media algorithms have been getting increasingly good at knowing what I want. Better than before. Now they're like pushing me like all these diaspora artists.
Actually, that's the other thing that I would also encourage. Really, thanks for bringing that up for independent artists as well. Understanding the importance of metadata and how it relates to platforms.
What does that mean?
So metadata meaning the text and the information that you key in, right? So for example, when you put in a track into like the Belief system or any other system, if you upload a track to TuneCore or whatever, your genre, what's the mood, that kind of feels, right? When people are searching for your song, what are they going to be searching for? That kind of tags. But that should also be that's very important to understand as well, because that helps the algorithm.
Yeah.
Right, it helps the algorithm surface your content to people that are searching for it. Right, and the thing about algorithms, they are all data, right? And the one rule in data that I've always heard is shit in, shit out. So data algorithm is just a process,
right?
It's just a code that's there, right? If you give him shit, he's going to give you back shit, right? So if you give him good stuff, then the good stuff will come back, right? So if your metadata tags are all over the place, nothing's going to come back to you, right? But if your metadata tags and everything else is there, the algorithm will determine that, there's so many searches and blah blah blah, so this song maybe it's trending, then you surface your track to the top or something like that.
So
that's why it's important. That's why it's also important to upload it early into the system, so the fucker can start learning first before your song even gets released. It takes time for the machine to learn as well, right? Like, he has to scan your song, and then he has to determine which genre and stuff, and they have like code, they have scripts and stuff that can tell you like, this is the BPM of the song, this is where it peaks, this is where it dips, this is the tempo, this is the mood, and they have like they look at the waves and they're like, okay, I think this must be whatever genre.
Well, that is very, very micro. I never thought about it like that. Yeah, but I think it goes back to just like communication, right? Because for example, if you're looking at what publicists do, why do publicists write good press releases? It's because they just want platforms to take that press release and put it out, and then the communication will be like the same or like similar on all the channels, right? So I guess that's kind of the same with any other platform that you're putting your music out on, right? It has to all be coordinated, and it probably doesn't have to be exactly the same on all, but as you said, shit in, shit out.
Yeah, shit in, shit out, man. And the other thing as well is like algorithms, right? All these platforms now have these machine learning things and AI and all that other stuff, right? So what do you think helps the algorithm determine whether your track is successful or not, whether you're a successful artist, whether you're trending or not, right? So that's why you have to ask your fans to engage on the platform as well. Add my song to your playlist, or just stream my song on the platform and follow me on Spotify, stuff like that, right? So if a fan follows you on Spotify, the first benefit you get is every time you release a new release, that will surface on that page because they follow you.
Wow.
So yeah, metadata is very important. Getting your audience to engage the algorithm is also very important. If you're using a platform like TikTok or Facebook or any social media, even on Spotify actually, if you use their native tools to help you generate the content, also that feeds into the algorithm, right? So if you do artist pick, right? If you do if you link your shit to Songkick, I think, then that shows up your concerts on Spotify.
Yeah.
And you can put virtual concerts that feeds data into the algorithm as well. For TikTok, you do a video and then you do it with, I don't know, Adobe Premiere or something, and then you cut it down 15 seconds, upload it straight to TikTok. As compared to the video that you use a TikTok filter, you use TikTok effects and all that other stuff that is created solely on TikTok. Which one do you think the algorithm is going to surface? Obviously the one that promotes their own tools, right?
Yeah.
So there you go, it's very important.
Wow. But going back to the metadata and like putting that metadata into Belief Backstage, which metadata specifically are you talking about? Like just like the artist names?
Yeah, artist names
just all
should be
that kind
correct,
of stuff.
Your genre should be accurate.
Okay.
RSRCs, your UPCs and everything.
Yeah.
Artist names also, if you because the thing is it's all gone through a delivery feed, right? So if you misspell the artist name, it's going to create a new artist profile for you. And it's going to have that song linked into the other artist profile, and then
it's going to be a bitch.
It's going to be a bitch. Exactly, man. And on YouTube as well, YouTube uses the same algorithm as Google does with the SEO searches. So on Google, on YouTube, when you upload a video, there are tags that you can put in, right? So those tags should contain all the words that your fans will be searching for to find your video. So they should also include misspellings of your band name and stuff like that.
Oh.
There's a couple of points that I actually wanted to mention, but I didn't get to put in, I guess. One is, if you depend on a DSP for your plan to succeed, then you have already failed.
If you depend on the DSP for your plan to succeed, then you... Okay, that is a very interesting point. Yeah, I definitely believe in that, because I think a lot of... I see some artists who, obviously, they put no work in, and that's terrible. But I see some artists who put all their expectations onto either the one particular DSP, or maybe they put all of their attention and their focus onto digital streaming, and then they don't do anything else.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I don't know if that's worse, but it's pretty bad, because number one, it puts unnecessary pressure on this partner. Like, you shouldn't be putting all your undivided attention onto them. And number two, you're definitely going to be disappointed. And number three, if you only put your attention on this particular part of the music business, then as you said, like, where are people going to go to find your story? Because they're not just... Streaming is just one way that people can find your music. And then after they find your music, where are they going to go? Yeah. Right?
So if the person fancies your song and he wants to establish a deeper connection with you, what have you got set up to capture that, right? So if you have nothing set up, then that's a wasted dude, man. So he's going to probably be those that listen to your song one time and then forget about you, because I don't know how you look like, I don't know what your story is, I only know you have this one song that I like. Yeah,
and I think that goes back to like marketing and like engagement, right? It's like a sales funnel.
It is, I guess, but you can choose to do it, you can choose not to do it, right? But I think everybody is doing it, so if you don't do it, then
you miss out.
You're kind of losing out, but I mean, it's up to you, right? Like, nobody can force you to do anything, I suppose.
Alright, so that was a very insightful conversation, especially about metadata, how artists can kind of communicate their stuff properly to the platforms, and also like a really good deep dive into Southeast Asian music market, which I feel like not many people focus on. Thanks so much, Tim, for being here.
I hope you understood my ramblings.
I did. I probably have a lot of editing to do, but that's fine. It's all part of the job. Anyway, thank you so much for being here.
No problem.
I'll see you in the office sometime. Alright, bye.
Alright.
The Level Up podcast is brought to you jointly by Blossoming Bridge Creative and Asian Pop Weekly. Be sure to follow on our socials at Asian Pop Weekly, and also check out our website if you're looking for more Mandarin or Asian music content. If you like what you're hearing on this podcast, be sure to like, subscribe, and follow, and we'll see you on the next one.